Haha, just pretending I had turned the sound on. I was just being silly. Hello. Oh, my screen's just gone blank. Hopefully yours hasn't. Cool. Right, well, this is my second session of today. The noise you're about to hear says that my Discord audio channel is open. And yes, second session today because I was up very early in the morning, so I think it was stupidly early that I did my first stream. This one is not quite so stupidly early, and my plan is literally to continue. Now, I have a confession to make. Well, it's sort of a confession. Earlier on, I got very irate because Amazon, yesterday at about 6 p.m, sent me an email to say they'd delivered a package, and they had a photograph of it on my doorstep. And when I saw that email at 4 o'clock this morning when I woke up, I went down and checked and it wasn't there. It has since turned up, which I don't understand. The only thing I can think of is a neighbour of mine, possibly, saw it there thinking that could get nicked and then grabbed hold of it. However, what's really stupid is it would have fit through my letterbox. So I don't know what the hell Amazon are playing at. I don't know why I broke my rule and used them, but I won't be doing that. Right, let's test to see if my text is working. Yes, it is. Better than just sending a message saying test, isn't it? It's the lyrics of a song. Sometimes you're better off dead. There's a gun in your hand and it's pointing at your head. You think you're mad, too unstable, kicking in chairs and knocking down tables in a restaurant in a West End town. Call the police, there's a man ran around running down underground to a dive bar in a West End town. I wonder what that could be. Anyway, it's better than just sending test. So I'm just going to crack straight on with chapter 34, I think, because we're now well into the material from that I wrote more recently. And so, yeah, literally just going to crack on. So I'm going to minimise that screen and I'm going to press that button and we shall crack on. So chapter 34, an impasse. 2 days passed inside the cells. Ronnie's demand for first aid was not met, and on the first full day of their incarceration, one of the 3 soldiers died. X-Ray, whose real name was Vishal Sharvar, did not seem as badly hurt as the other 2. Paulson's body had been removed quickly, but Ronnie was not optimistic that the other man, Campbell, would last much longer. Ronnie, Vickers, Maran and Sharvar took turns monitoring him. He had not eaten anything since they'd been held prisoner. Marianne was taking their turn watching Campbell. Sharvar was asleep upright on the bed. Vickers and Ronnie were sitting opposite with their backs to the wall. Ronnie's eyes were closed and she was breathing slowly. Vickers, bored, was gazing at her face. Her eyes flicked open and she saw him looking at her. He dropped his eyes. "What?" Ronnie asked. Vickers smiled and shook his head. There's a very nice slow build up to this. I hadn't realised quite how... without wanting to big myself up, I just felt like when I wrote the scene where where something happens, that it came out of nowhere, but it really didn't. Vickers smiled and shook his head. "Nothing. There's not much else to look at in here. So you were looking at me?" Vickers chuckled. "Sorry," he said, a broad grin crossing his face. Ronnie leaned sideways so their head was resting on his shoulder. "If we get away from here, what do you plan to do? With your future, I mean." "I mean professionally." Ronnie lifted a head and looked at him. "You won't have a profession. I'm talking about after Ragnarok. If we survive." "It's inevitable then." Ronnie exhaled. "I think so. Carl Tucker will win the election. He'll reverse all of the green policies that He'll reverse all the green policies the government are trying to... He will be the first, but others will be... because it suddenly... around the world. Right, let's make that. Well, it's, I think so. Carl Tucker will win the election. He'll reverse all the green policies the government are trying to implement. He'll be the first. He will be the first, but others around the world will be emboldened by his actions. As a result, the trees will do as they say and remove oxygen until we're all dead. Ronnie shook her head mournfully, then forced a smile. But I'm talking about in the world after. If Idrisil wins that argument and some of us are allowed to survive, you could be one of them. Vickers shrugged. I don't know what that world would look like. Never mind understand my place in it. There's a village close by, said Ronnie. A team of Yakunda and Opus will be released first. Once the oxygen returns, and ensure any human remains there are appropriately disposed of. Fix up anything that needs fixing on the buildings. There is land close by that will be cleared for growing food. Then the rest of us will wake, take her home, live from the land. It'll be back to basic existence, but we will survive. Vickers grinned. I could cope with that. Do you think so? He nodded. A simple life. Sounds great. Hello, how are you feeling? Well, life sounds great. Ronnie shook her head. You're basically an old man trapped in a teenager's body, aren't you? I'm in my early 20s, thank you very much, said Vickers, a look of mock hurt crossing his features. Then he broke into a grin. I've got lots of references to him grinning, so let's just lose that. Oh, that's good. Yeah, all right. I'm less jet lagged today by the fact I'm actually doing something. I forgot to do a podcast yesterday. I realised about 1 a.m. and thought, shall I put one out and pretend that I put it out on the right day? But I couldn't be bothered. So yeah, there was accidentally no podcast yesterday, but there will be today. Very naughty. I'm early 20s, thank you very much, said Vickers, a look of mock hurt crossing his features. But my mum used to say something similar. He looked down. I hope we make it, miss, and I hope that I can spend some time with you if we do. He looked away, his face reddening. Ronnie grinned at his discomfort. She slipped her hand down towards his, squeezed it quickly and gently, and pulled away. I'd like that, she whispered. Vickers did not have time to respond, because at that moment there was a loud thud as something large and heavy hit the cell door. Everybody leapt to their feet apart from Campbell, who remained lolling on the bed, his eyes closed. Yeah, no, it wasn't the episode. It wasn't a case of it didn't appear on YouTube. It didn't appear anywhere because it just completely forgot to do it. What's that? Yelled Sharvar. Help if we're lucky, stated Ronnie. There was another thud and the door moved slightly. There was the sound of a scream from outside, then the door burst open. Standing in the door was a figure that had a male build, but was made entirely out of wood. Vickers' eyes bulged. What on earth? Everyone stay exactly where they are, Ronnie commanded. Vickers and Marianne will be safe. Sharvar, make no sudden moves. Bloody hell. Marianne's heavily back down on the bed. Ronnie nodded. Yes, it resembles Mackenzie. That's the standard for pattern for skull in Scotland. The skull leapt backwards. It was stylised. The human form was smooth, rather like a shop window dummy, and there was nothing resembling hair on. This is the head. I'm going to say its head. On its head. The bald wooden mannequin of Mackenzie stood before Ronnie, staring at her. Vero Andy, it said eventually, addressing Ronnie directly. The voice was barely human, grating and rough, but still with Mackenzie's Scottish lilt. Uro communicated your situation to us. We arrived as soon as we could. Is she okay? Asked Ronnie. Behind her, she heard Marianne gasp Ursula's name. Uro was badly damaged, and it will take a long time to heal her. But she will heal, yes. At that moment, Oakley burst into the room. He saw Ronnie, smiled and hugged her. As they drew apart, he winked at her. Well done. Ursula's such a brave lady. Ronnie nodded. I'm sorry I couldn't explain, she said, turning to Vickers and Marianne. If they had caught me talking to you on camera, the element of surprise may have been lost. They've opened all 3 cells, stated Oakley. There are 7 Arbor soldiers left alive. Sergeant Fraser was in my cell, but he died the day we arrived. The others are alive and doing okay, considering. He looked at Marianne. I'm sorry to tell you this, Marianne, but Mackenzie is also in my cell. He's had some kind of contraption fitted to his head and he's been unconscious since we arrived. He's very ill, I'm afraid. Matthews was in there with us. He's surprised he hasn't died already. He saw Marianne's face crumple. Sorry to be so blunt. Ronnie walked over to them. Go and see him. Marianne shook her head. He won't even know I'm there. Ronnie put her arm around their shoulder. It's for you as much as for him. Marianne nodded through the tears. Which cell? Next door, said Oakley softly. Marianne walked over to the door and entered the adjacent cell. Oakley joined Ronnie at the desk. A single school was holding the guard that had been watching their cells by his throat, not tight enough to prevent him from breathing, but enough to immobilise him. Oakley glanced at the guard. He was not much older than Vickers, he thought to himself. Well done, he said to Ronnie. Marianne and Adrian were mad at me, said Ronnie. I couldn't risk explaining in case we were being monitored. Very wise, said Oakley gruffly, glancing at the screen that showed the inside of her cell. He leaned in close to Ronnie. Ursula's one hell of a brave lady. Now, we have a decision to make. The school have incapacitated, but not hurt, the people working here. Shall arrangements be brought down to these cells? Ronnie shook her head. We can't afford to. If they're alive, they can resist. We don't have the manpower to look after them. So what do you intend to do? Ronnie straightened up and addressed the Skuld that was holding the guard. Skuld, kill your prisoner. The young man whimpered as the wooden hand tightened round his throat. He looked at Ronnie, his eyes pleading and tears falling until an unpleasant popping sound came from his neck. His eyes, whilst open, lost their shine, and his limp body fell to the floor. As he fell, his radio crackled into life. Anyone listening? It's Sayers. I'm in the Arboretum with Claire. We're surrounded by what look like wooden men. I need help quickly. Is there anybody listening? Oak looked at the body of the young man. Oak looked from the body of the young man over to Ronnie. I'm not going to get on your bad side. Ronnie shook her head sadly. I don't relish it. Now we need to make a direct intervention. She looked down at the body briefly, then turned back to her cell. Vickers, Sharvar, and anyone else that's well enough, come with me. We need to get to the Arboretum. What are you going to do? Asked Oakley. I still need to find a way of freeing the entity in the Arboretum, otherwise Ragnarok is a certainty. She looked across to the middle cell. Give Marianne a moment with Mackenzie, but not too long. We need him. We need to take him up to the Arboretum, and if we can't get him into that tree, then any tree nearby that's big enough. It's his only chance. Agreed, nodded Oakley. Ronnie gestured to the soldiers. All four of her protection unit were left, and the 7 surviving Arbor troopers. She turned to a nearby Skuld. Skuld, she called. Learn. The figure walked silently up to her. You will obey instructions from this man. She touched Oakley on the shoulder. The next people I touch must not be harmed under any circumstances. They are here to protect me as you are. She swiftly walked around and touched each man on the shoulder. She allowed it to linger somewhat on Vickers' shoulder before she moved on. Share, she demanded. Right, she said. With me. Vickers and Sharvar went ahead, Vickers stooping to collect the pistol at the dead guard's waist. Ronnie was in the middle, and the other soldiers followed her up the stairs. A line of 4 Skuld followed them. Marianne walked into the cell. Their eyes fell on Mackenzie and widened. He'd never been well built, but he'd lost so much weight since they'd seen him last that he resembled a bald skeleton in an overlarge tracksuit. Doc Matthews was sitting next to him on the bed, monitoring his vital signs as well as he could without any equipment. He saw Marianne enter. He's almost gone, said the doctor. I'm shocked he lasted this long. How much time? Whispered Marianne. I would guess less than an hour, said Matthews. He's noticeably deteriorated in the last 15 minutes. I'm sorry. Can I have a minute? Matthews stood. Of course, he said, and headed to the door. He turned back. It's not like I can do anything to help him, he said before leaving the cell. Marianne kneeled on the floor. Knelt. Knelt on the floor next to Mackenzie. There was barely any movement in his from his chest. I'll say movement from his chest. Barely movement from his chest. And his skin was ashen grey. There was a circuit of metal fixed to his head. They brushed it with their hand, but it was firmly attached and did not move. I'm sorry, Mackenzie, they said through tears. I'm sorry we let you down. I'm sorry I got upset with you in the car. They grasped his hand for a moment. It was cold and clammy, and squeezed it. There was no reciprocal response. They leaned down, examining his thin face with its shaved head and slight stubble around the cheeks. His eyes were shut fast. Marianne leaned down until their lips were against his. As they kissed him gently, a tear dripped from their cheek and landed on his forehead. I've missed you so much. They choked on their words. Oakley stepped into the door and watched for a few moments as Marianne sat holding Mackenzie's hand. Eventually he interrupted. Marianne, sorry, we need to get him upstairs, into a tree. It's his only chance. Marianne wiped the hand across their face, letting go of Mackenzie's. What do we do? Oakley looked grim. Let's see if Ronnie's instruction worked. Skuld, he said, addressing the nearest wooden figure. Pick up this person and follow me with him. Skuld stopped in front of him, then looked between Marianne and Mackenzie. It doesn't know which of us to carry, Marianne whispered. Of course, muttered Oakley. Ronnie touched me. To clarify, she meant me. He leaned down and touched Mackenzie's shoulder. Skuld, pick up this person carefully and follow me. This time the figure responded. It walked to Mackenzie, pulled him upright by the hands and put him gently over its shoulder. Right, said Oakley with satisfaction. Let's see if we can get him some help. He left the room with Marianne in tow, the Skuld following them. Giving it a wide berth, Matthews followed them up the stairs. Fuck! Sayers was looking at a monitor in the Arboretum. On it was displayed the CCTV feed from a camera just outside. 10 minutes ago, more than 30 people that looked as though they were made from wood had formed a ring around the Arboretum. Several more had been in the background, clutching members of the staff of the compound by the neck. Moments ago, the wooden creatures had simultaneously killed their prisoners. Those who were now free of a human burden joined the others at the circumference of the Arboretum. Claire was strapped to the bed adjacent to the computers. Her head had been shaved, and in the process she'd received some bruising around her face. She'd been forced into a tracksuit, and beneath it was a white t-shirt. There was bruising around her neck. Don't need to do the double mention of the bruising, so let's just tidy that up. and neck. That's better. They're all dead, screamed Sayers. He looked down at Claire. Including Clayton? She asked. No. Shame. But no, he left. Shame. Says Ramsden. When they get in here, they're going to kill us. Didn't you see what they did outside? I need to talk to Signwolf now. Claire shut her eyes and a tear fell down her cheek. Don't be pathetic, Sayers shouted at her. He leaned down till he was screaming into her face. She could smell his foul breath and see that his teeth needed cleaning. You can save us. What chapter is this? Chapter 34. She shook her head. I'll die, she said between tears. This is going to kill me like it did that poor kid. You'll die a hell of a lot bloody quicker if those things get in here, he yelled at her. He fastened the straight around her neck so that she could not move. Please don't. Claire pleaded one more time. Begged. Not pleaded. Sayers slapped her face angrily, then took an interface crown from the work surface next to his computer. He placed it around her head. She could feel the cold metal on her forehead. He plugged in the cables that surrounded it, and then looked back into her face. I'm going to connect you now. I'd say it won't hurt, but you know I'd be lying. No, but it happens, unfortunately, occasionally. You have weeks like that. I have weeks like that occasionally. And do you know what? Better to get better and then do everything than try and do something when you're not in the right state to do it. But no, I do understand why you dislike it. He returned to his console and pressed a few buttons. The needles in the crown immediately burrowed into Claire's skin and through her skull. She screamed and passed out. Shakily, Sayers called up the monitoring function on his computer. Claire did not display the same waveform that Mackenzie had shown, but it was similar. He did not know if using her instead of him would require recalibration. He hoped not. There was so little time. He sent the signal to the tree and watched as Claire's brain pattern started to change. The sugar pumps remained silent, and Sayers turned up the brightness of the Arboretum lights. I'm going to just change that slightly. But Sayers turned up the brightness of the Arboretum lights. That makes more sense. So says, yeah. A moment later, Claire spoke. This is better. This form will live longer than the previous host. Claire's eyes opened and she looked over at Sayers. What have you called me here for? Sayers dashed over to her in a panic. The compound has been taken over by tree men. I think all of my colleagues are dead. I'm trapped in here. You have to help me. Claire seemed to consider for a moment. I understand that sexual congress is traditionally conducted with the consent of both parties, she said after a moment. Sayers opened his mouth and stared at her. What? He finally yelled. I understand that sexual congress... I heard you! Sayers interrupted. What the fuck has it got to do with anything? The form I'm occupying, the man called Clayton, did not acquire consent. I don't care, shrieked Sayers. You have to help me. Claire grinned at him. The girl was terrified, embarrassed, hurt, humiliated. Is this something that happens regularly amongst your people? Sayers looked at Claire wild-eyed. I don't think so, he said, flustered. It is considered a crime, and yet Claire's memory is that you allowed Clayton to do this. Sayers went red. I don't like what he did, he muttered eventually. But you did not prevent it. That is not a pressing issue, yelled Sayers. There are more and more tree people outside, and when they get in here, they will kill me. Yes, said Claire. You have to help me. Like you helped her? Sayers broke down into tears. I don't know what you want me to say, he said through choked cries. Your race has rules of contact that many of you, it seems, ignore for a moment of gratification. The more I learn, the more I realise that sterilization is necessary. I will not save you, Mr. Sayers. There was a pause, and then Claire continued. The girl also knows the truth about Project Yankee. She knows it was a trick. You faked your death in front of her to convince Mackenzie that your project had failed. You wanted me to believe that our mycelia would be safe from the side effects of that process. Claire paused as the entity within her thought. The only reason you would do that was because you wanted to convince Mackenzie that the information within the documents was true. I suspect that my mycelia are dead. I'm cut off from the others anyway, therefore I cannot test that. Claire tried to shake her head. Lies and cheats. That is what you are. I will not save any of you. Something snapped in Sayers. You will, he bellowed. He yanked the leads from the crown and watched as the creature inside Claire suddenly realised that it could not return to the tree. You will! He grabbed Claire by the throat and started squeezing. Try and escape now. Claire's eyes bulged, but as she did so, the movement of the scold outside became frenzied. Whereas before they were standing in a circle around the arboretum, now they were running for the walls. Those that were positioned near to the metal doors bounced off, but the others soon realised that most of the dome was made from a much weaker material. They started clawing at it and throwing themselves at the thin surface. "Tell them to stop!" screamed Sayers, both of his hand around Claire's neck. He did not notice movement in the imprisoned tree above the line of the metal cladding. He failed to hear the thump as a scold that had been created from the tree behind him landed on the floor. He then heard a noise and narrowly missed the heavy charge of the wooden figure. He leapt back around to the computer. "Stop! Tell it to stop or I'll smash the equipment. You'll never get back." The figure stopped walking towards him. Instead, it walked over to Claire and released her from the straps that were holding her in place in the surgical bed. She sat bolt upright, then jumped to the floor. She approached Snares and snatched the leads from his hand as the skulk leapt behind him and pinned his arms behind his back. Claire walked over to a monitor that showed the inside of the arboretum and used the image, I'm going to say as a mirror. Hang on. Use the image as a mirror. Claire walked over to the monitor that showed the inside of the arboretum and used the image as a mirror to help her push the cables back into place. Then she turned back to Sayers. Let's lose the back. "You are savages. You pretend that you're civilised, but the moment you believe you can get away with something, you abandon your principles. This world is safer without you. There will be no designated survivors. Once the collective sees what I have seen, the outcome is certain." Claire looked at Sayers. "I wish I could put you through what you've put this girl through. If I could think of a way, I would make it happen. Instead, I will allow you to live with the knowledge of your impending death." She paused for a moment. "However, there is one thing that Claire wishes she could do." She walked so that she was half a leg's length in front of Sayers, then turned to one of the skulls. "Hurt him if he disobeys me." She looked at Sayers. "Lie down on the floor, on your back, now." Sayers' breathing was in short gasps. She looked at him, enjoying his terror as he gently lowered himself onto the floor. "What are you going to do?" he cried as he lay on his back. "Close your eyes," demanded Claire. Almost in tears, Sayers did as she was told. Claire took a step forward so she was standing between his ankles. She glared at him, then after a few seconds rammed her foot as hard as she could repeatedly into his groin. Sayers screamed in agony, brought his legs together and curled into a ball. Claire sat back down on the bed and her eyes closed. On the monitor, the signals separated. A moment later, Claire opened her eyes. She sat up and saw Sayers on the floor next to a man that appeared to be made from wood. Terrified, she ran for the metal door and used a security code to open it. More skulls entered the room. One grabbed her gently and firmly so that she could not move. The skull from the tree in the arboretum started to smash the computer screens with all its might. It hit anything it could see. Well, need to. Breaking, not smashing, because I've already used the word smashing. Breaking every switch and screen and keyboard. The others watched it impassive. Finally, it leapt to the tree, scrambled up and over the metal cladding to the bare bark, and was quickly reabsorbed. Just as the skull vanished into the tree, the canvas to the side of the door, which had been pummeled mercilessly by the skull outside, gave away with an enormous ripping sound. 3 skulls leapt in and advanced towards Clay, who screamed and tried to run away. They noticed Sayers on the floor and advanced upon him. A moment later, Ronnie jumped in through the new opening. "Skuld!" she commanded. "Stop!" Sayers sat up groggily. Ronnie walked over to him. "Skuld, learn." No, I don't think it is. Gently but firmly. She can't move, but he's not hurting her, is what I'm trying to say. Because they can't move, but they're not being hurt in the process. I've lost my spot now. I may put securely rather than firmly. Yep. Hang on, let me just do a bit of Googling. Gentleness can be a strength and firmness doesn't always mean harshness. Yeah, no, I'm happy to leave that as it is. Right. Ronnie sat up. Sayers sat up groggily. Ronnie walked over to him. "Schooled learn," she commanded. She touched Sayers on the shoulder and he winced and cowered away. "This man must be detained, but he must not be hurt until I say otherwise." She looked back over to Claire, whose eyes were red and wet with tears. Her faint glow gave her away as Jocunda. "This one should be protected. Share." She looked at Claire. "You're Mackenzie's replacement." Claire shook her head. "He must be dead now, poor mate." Ronnie shook her head. "Not quite, but it won't be long unless we help him." Claire walked over to the bed and sat on the end. "I'm going to die as well," she said miserably. "This," she gestured to the crown, "it's killing him. It'll kill me too." "What's your name?" "Claire." "I might be able to help you, Claire," said Ronnie gently. "You don't know what this means, but you are Jocunda. When the trees wipe out humanity, if they allow anyone to survive, you can be one of those survivors." "I don't understand," cried Claire. "The trees can protect you from the forthcoming apocalypse," said Ronnie, "and repair the damage to you as they do it." She looked at Claire, noticing the bruising on her face. "What happened to you?" Claire closed her eyes as more tears fell down her cheek. "Clayton, one of Sayers' minions." She gestured to Sayers as she said his name. "He shaved my head. Ronnie put her arms around Claire and hugged her. "I'm sorry." A fresh sob told her that her assumption was correct. At that moment, Oakley stepped into the arboretum with Marianne and the Skald carrying Mackenzie in tow. He looked around him, taking in the smashed computer console, Claire and Sayers. "What is all this for?" he asked. Sayers looked away. Marianne jumped down so that they were at eye level with him. "I have a friend who's about to die. Can you help him?" "No," sneered Sayers. "Simon will smash the interface. We can't communicate with it anymore." "Then we need to get Mackenzie outside," stated Ronnie. "No," said Claire, shaking her head. "He has a formula in his brain that will destroy the Dryads' ability to communicate with each other, the mycelial network. He can't interface until someone has informed them of the details of that deception." "Which will take time," said Ronnie. "We don't have time," snapped Marianne. "So it has to be this tree," said Oakley, "since it's isolated from the others." "Yes," said Oakley. "Also, Simon knows of the deception. If we can connect it back to the collective..." Oakley nodded. "The Arbor Troopers are currently trying to locate some equipment they brought with them, a mycelia-based fibre optic cable." Interested despite himself, Sayers stood. "Interesting. That should have the bandwidth to enable Simon to leave this tree as well as share the information about our deception." "Please, what are we going to do for Mackenzie?" asked Marianne desperately. "We must try and get him to interface with this tree," stated Ronnie. Sayers shook his head. "The entity inside is pretty pissed off with me. I don't think it'll help." "We have to try," pleaded Marianne. Oakley looked at the tree in front of him. The first 2 metres of the wide trunk were coated with metal. "We need to get him up there above all of that cladding." "Agreed. We also somehow need to try and persuade the entity within to agree to original plans for..." That's really bloody. That line is appallingly exposition-y, and I think we probably already know it anyway. How about if I lose that bit and just keep that bit? "We need to get him up there above all that cladding." "Agreed," said Ronnie. "Freeing it should help at least." "Freeing..." Oakley looked at the tree in front of him. The first 2 metres of the wide trunk were coated with metal. "We need to get him up there above all of that cladding." "Agreed," said Ronnie. "Freeing it should at least help to gain its trust." Should help to gain its trust. "Maybe it will help us then." "It's already decided that we don't deserve to live," said Sayers. "Then we need to change its mind," said Ronnie. "Can you fix the computer?" Sayers looked at the smashed hardware. "You think you can persuade it to save us?" "I can try." I'm going to put "I have to try" instead of "I can try." "I have to try." So thought from okay, he said it should be a case of replacing the computer and monitors. I have a backup with all the software loaded and the hardware attached that it needs to make the interface work. I can get it. Skuld, accompany this man. Do not let him escape. Sayers walked to the metal door. One more thing, he said as he turned to face them. You don't need to lift the young man above the metal shrouding on the tree. It doesn't need the sugar injections anymore. Just pull the plates away. Sayers left the room, 3 Skuld in tow. Marianne and Oakley dashed over to the tree. The plates were very close together. There was no obvious gaps that may make it possible to lever them off. How do you remove them? Asked Marianne. I don't know. Oakley looked grim. Maybe the Skuld can do it, suggested Ronnie. Skuld, remove an area of the metal plates on the tree, enough for a human to physically interface. A Skuld walked over and within moments was ripping the metal. Let's lose the word metal. Maybe the Skuld can do it, suggested Ronnie. Skuld, remove an area of the metal plates on the tree, enough for a human to physically interface. A Skuld looked over and within moments was ripping the metal from the tree. The insides were covered with fine needles that oozed sugar solution as they were removed. It felt uncomfortably like ripping off a bandage before a wound had healed, reopening the injury again in the process. Soon there's an air of cladding removed that was more than large enough to enable Mackenzie to interface. Ronnie and Oakley walked up to the surface of the wounded tree. There was no bark. It had been stripped away so that the inner flesh was exposed. Raising his eyebrows, Oakley leaned forward and placed his hand on the surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the skin, skin, skin of the tree raised around his hand. Raised, that's not good. On the skin of the tree. Swelled around his fingers without absorbing them. It's as I thought, said Oakley resignedly. There is one tree on this earth that doesn't know that I've been excommunicated, as it were, and it's the only tree that Mackenzie can survive in. He shook his head. Oh well, I'd hoped this might be my way out. He ran his fingers through his hair. Bugger and bollocks, he exclaimed. Time is pressing, said Ronnie. Skuld, bring Mackenzie over here and help him to interface. The Skuld that was carrying Mackenzie stepped forward until it was holding the boy immediately in front of the tree. A second wooden golem took hold of his hands, gently for such a rough-looking creature, and held them up to the damaged surface. As with Oakley, the wood raised itself around his fingers, then dropped away again. Claire stepped forward. It seems Simorph doesn't want to help him. Marianne took Mackenzie's hand from the Skuld and held it between theirs. What do we do now? I'll get Matthews to come and watch over him, said Oakley. There were footsteps in the tunnel, and moments later Vishal Sharvar burst in through the open door, 2 of his colleagues behind him. He was carrying the cable box. He rushed to the base of the tree and opened it. He turned to Ronnie and pushed his fingers into the soil that surrounded the roots of the tree. Surrounded the roots, I don't need to say of the tree. Here? He asked. Ronnie nodded. Sharvar opened the box and pulled out a large reel. He unwound the cable and pulled a knife from a toolkit at the end of the box. He cut the end of... He unwound the cable and pulled a knife from a toolkit in the lid of the box. He cut the end of the cable, pulling out the fibrous strands and winding them around a small metal spike that had been made for the task. It had a rough surface and the fungus clung to it. He took a hammer and used it to drive the spike into the ground at the point Ronnie had approved. I'm going to say indicated, is it better? Indicated. And outside in a similar place? Asked Sharvar. Yes, said Ronnie. Follow me. I'll show you precisely where. Sharvar picked up the reel and rolled the cable from the spindle. Ronnie led him to the hole in the canvas. More direct, she said as she climbed through. He followed, spoogling cable out behind him. Sayers returned moments later with a trolley. On it was a new computer tower, a pair of monitors, a keyboard and a mouse. His 3 wooden escorts lumbered in behind him, staying close. This should be all I need, said Sayers. Hopefully I can directly swap out all the kit. We just have to hope that none of the hardware interfaces are broken. He heaved the tower from the trolley onto the counter. Ronnie turned to Oakley. Gordon, do you have your phone on you? Of course I do, he replied. Take a video of the smashed system before Sayers repairs. Smash systems before Sayers repairs them. Be careful not to get the kit he's just brought here in the shot, but get as much of the rest of the room as you can. Include the cladding pulled from the tree. Oakley frowned but nodded. OK, he said, pulling out his phone and making the recording. He showed Ronnie the results and she nodded. Perfect, she said with a smile. What are you planning? Nothing, just for contingencies. Oakley looked as though he did not believe her, but nodded anyway. Ronnie turned back to Sayers. You can start fixing it now. Sayers started pulling cables out from the wrecked tower. It shouldn't take too long, he said, as he threw the smashed keyboard onto the trolley. As he did so, he sniffed. What's that smell? Oakley frowned. I see what you mean. It was not an electrical smell, but there was a definite odour coming from somewhere. Marianne let go of Mackenzie's hand. Is it dangerous? I don't know, said Oakley. It's getting stronger. Could it be poisonous? Do you think we should evacuate? Asked Claire. Marianne shook her head. If we don't, we won't be able to help Mackenzie if we do that. Does everyone feel okay? Asked Oakley. Everyone nodded just as Ronnie stepped back in through the hole in the canvas, followed by Sharvar. She wrinkled her nose. Something smells, she said. Like fried mushrooms. Of course, cried Oakley, dashing to the spike that Sharvar had driven into the ground. Help me get this out. He reached into the soil but failed to get a grip on the spike. Sharvar joined him, but instead of reaching for the spike, he tugged the end of the cable that was poking out of the soil. The mycelial strands within were breaking down, turning a dirty yellowish brown colour, when they should have been grey. Claire heaved herself from the bed and walked over, inspecting the dead fungus poking out from the end of the cable. Project Yankee, she said suddenly. Sayers tried to trick the tree into producing a super sugar, which it did, hence why I've been able to disconnect the sugar pumps. The side effect of the process is a chemical that kills the mycelia. Shit, said Oakley. How quickly does it work? If it gets into the mycelia outside, it will eventually contaminate the entire tree population of the planet, said Ronnie. It will take years, not quick enough to prevent Ragnarok. Sayers looked around. And that's a bad thing, he screamed. Let's consider it a weapon in our cache that we don't want to employ quite yet, said Oakley. Ronnie nodded in agreement. I'll go and pull out the other end of the cable just in case, said Sharvar, jumping up and dashing towards the hole in the canvas. And I'm just going to add a line there. Bring the whole cable back in here. Bring the whole cable back in here, Ronnie called after him. Claire sat back down. That's the information Mackenzie carries. He believes that the project was designed to kill the mycelia, but that the scientists failed to make it work. He has instructions in his mind that teaches the tree to produce the super sugar. So that's why it can't be connected to the main network, said Ronnie. I understand. If they follow the instructions, they will create the new fuel but separate themselves from the collective in the process. Even if they try it in one location, it will eventually spread. So we have to tell them before he can put into any tree other than this one, said Marianne morosely. Otherwise they may try it, like this one clearly has. Simulf, the entity within the tree, knows the truth now, said Claire. If we can find another way to reconnect it, we can save Mackenzie in any of the local trees large enough to house him. It's vital we talk to Simon then, said Ronnie. You, what's your name? She pointed at Sayers, who told her. Sayers, how are you getting on? OK, he said. The only damaged hardware interface is the sugar pump control unit. We don't need that for now. Sayers took the other end of the cable that was attached to Claire's crown. It had been dragging along behind her as she moved around, and plugged it into the computer. He turned on the monitors. They were smaller than the ones that had been smashed, and initiated the software. One screen showed Claire's brainwave, the other showed the pattern that Sayers recognised as Simewolf. Sit down, he ordered Claire. He looked across to the others. We usually restrain them for this bit. It's for their own good. Oakley walked over to the bed. Arms and legs? And neck, yes, said Sayers. Is that necessary? Asked Ronnie. It's fine, said Claire. Do it. Looking unsure, Oakley secured her arms and neck whilst Ronnie did the same with her legs. Sorry, said Oakley as he snapped the neck straight into place. He looked up at Sayers. What now? Now I connect them. Simewolf will inhabit Claire, and we will be able to talk to it. He used the mouse to press some buttons. I'm effectively ringing a call bell. How long does it take? Asked Ronnie impatiently. Not long, said Sayers. You will see the waveform on this screen. You will see the waveform on this screen, he indicated the one showing Claire's brain pattern, become more like this one. He pointed to the one that represented Simewolf. Nothing's happening, said Oakley. Would it usually have happened by now? Yes, said Sayers with concern on his face. I think perhaps I've frightened it off. He sent the call signal again. The pattern on the second screen flared as he did it, and Sayers shook his head. The pathway is open. Simewolf doesn't want to talk. The skull carrying Mackenzie stepped forward. This animal is about to cease to function. He's going to die, shouted Marianne. Ronnie shook her head. I'm so sorry. I don't think there's anything we can do for him. Dun dun dun. Right. Export to Word. Oh, hello. How are you? I don't know why I did that really camp wave, but hello. You're good. Good to hear. Right. Yeah, I'm just signing off chapter, where am I? This is chapter 34. Right, so that's done. Now I need to, have I got, oh yes. Right, let's drag this into here. I'm going to get the next chapter signed off, which is a bit longer than this one. Then I've got to go into town because there's some artwork I've had framed and I need to go and collect it. Right, 92% overall score. I'll have that. That'll do to start with. Right, let's see what it's telling me. Oh man, yeah, we'll go with that. Who was that argument and some of us allowed to survive? Yeah, that's just the AI not understanding it. Have you got trees? Oh, I have. I hadn't even thought about that. Yes, yes, you're right. It's a T-shirt company I saw online. I just quite like it. I hadn't even thought about that. You're absolutely spot on. Ronnie straightened up and addressed the school. That who was holding the guard. Oh, hello, is that your Kai? Have I interacted with you before? I can't remember. Hello and welcome to my stream. I'm just signing off one chapter and I'm about to start working on another. No, it's your first time. Oh, hello. Feel free to ask me a million questions then. I'm quite happy to talk. And if you're really, really brave, the QR code in the top right-hand corner of the screen has a link to a Discord server. And on that Discord server is a live audio channel. So you can come and insult me in person if you want. But you don't have to, though. It wants me to change circlet to circle. No. Say as no, I'm going to put that in there. It hit, I think, see, breaking every switch. Okay, let's put commas in there then. I'll explain what I'm doing. I'm almost done with this. As soon as I've saved this edited version of the chapter, I shall tell you. Then we need to change its mind. So it's what's the best way to put it? It's a thriller. What's the word I'm looking for? Ecological thriller. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah, so it's hang on, let me literally just finish this last few comments, and then I'll talk to you in detail. I'm nearly there. Okay, so that's that done. Right, so the premise of the story, I just wanted to... You had a sale this month. Excellent. Physical or... Not that it really matters, because a sale is a sale. Right. So, in this story, basically, trees find a way of giving human beings an ultimatum. Because of... global warming and stuff, one could argue that we're damaging the planet, and the trees basically in this version of reality are so you've heard about mycelia. They are fungal strands that enable, oh god, I've just pressed They are fungal strands that allow all trees to talk to each other. Now, it's a very basic and rudimentary form of communication, but this is a kind of a what if. So what if actually trees are actually a lot smarter and talking to each other in a lot more detail than we think they can. Oh, hang on, I'm messing things up here. So the trees find a way of giving us an ultimatum, which is basically sorted out humanity, otherwise we'll stop breathing for 2 years, we'll survive and you won't. And that's basically what the story is about. This is really quite close to the end. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of so sort of thinking about what I'm doing here. I haven't said proper congratulations to Angel Faye. Thank you, yeah. No, well done. My favourite type of books to read are semi-autobiographies. Well, then you might like my first book, The English Hikikomori, although it's not that autobiographical, as you'll be able to tell from the ending and the fact that I'm still here. Right, so that's chapter 34 signed off. That's excellent. Yeah, so this is really close to the end of the story. Trees have effectively, there are two factions within the trees. Ones that believe that the human race should be given an opportunity to prove that we can change, and another group called the Ragnarok faction, who basically don't believe that we can change and want us to be destroyed. And at the moment the Ragnarok faction are kind of winning the argument in the trees, so it looks like the whole of the human race is about to die. Everybody at the moment is no longer human by, I don't know if I've heard of that, let me have a look. Oh, it's not a new book then. Oh, it's by Japan. Oh, I have to say, I do read. I should have guessed from the name, really. I do quite often read. So I'm reading. I read quite a lot of Haruki Murakami. I'm reading those. What are they called? The coffee shop, the time travelling coffee shop thing. I can never remember the author's name because it's got too many syllables in it. Hang on, I've got a book over there, but a door has just blown open the wind in front of it, so now I can't see it. But they're really good. I think it's the first one's called Before the Coffee Gets Cold or something like that. Yeah, they're really good. And there's a few other. They're the main two that I've read, but there's a few Japanese. Well, yeah, I've got all the windows open because it's quite warm in here, and yeah, I should go and prop it open with something. Hang on, I'll use me octopus. Come here, Thornton. Are you heavy enough? We'll soon find out. Yeah, there we go. And the author, I still can't see the book over there. But yeah, there's a few other Japanese authors that I've read. I've read a lot of. There's a really nice collection of Japanese short stories that I've read. I can't remember who published them and when, but they're really good. Yeah, I will have a look. I will pop it onto my Goodreads. Not Goodreads. I don't use Goodreads anymore. Bow Street Society. You missed me having a right old fit at Amazon earlier. So I ordered something against my better judgment, but it was considerably cheaper than anywhere else. And I got an email last night saying they'd left it on my doorstep, but I didn't see the email until 4 o'clock this morning when I woke up because of my jet lag. And I go out and it's not there. So they've left it on my door, on my front porch, which is open to the road. Okay. Let me have a look. That does sound quite interesting. Hang on. Where is my book reading app? I haven't used it in such a long time. Oh, there it is. Storygraph. Here we go. But yeah, so I kind of lost my rag and went onto their website and wouldn't offer me any help. Really wound me up. And then, to top it all off, no, it hadn't arrived. because it got posted through the door about 2 hours ago. Even though I got a notification and a photograph of it on my doorstep, it came through my door about 2 hours ago. So what the hell is going on, I don't know. But yes, that's what I assumed. I assumed somebody had nicked it as well. So really, really unimpressed with Amazon generally, as usual. Yeah, so the only thing I'm wondering is I've got a neighbour who likes watching things. I'm wondering if he picked it up to stop it getting stolen and then popped it through my door today. But this is the thing. It fits through the door. Why they left it on the sodding doorstep in the first place, I've no idea. Yeah, the Amazon drivers are dickheads, and it's, I kind of said I'm not going to use them anymore. I've bought a couple of things from them recently, and that has absolutely underscored my resolve. I will only use them from now on to buy. You can certainly recommend me some. I'd be very happy for you to do that. Is that Yokai? Is that the part of the world you're from, or is that where you are now? I'm trying to think what time it would be in Japan now. It's probably about, 7 or 8 o'clock if that's where you are? In the evening? Oh no, sorry, yeah, 8 o'clock maybe, 9 o'clock? Because you're 7 or 8 hours ahead, aren't you? I can never remember if it's exactly the same as Singapore time, but I know Singapore is currently 7 hours ahead. But yeah, so I think that's what happened, Bow Street Society, but I'm not amused with Amazon at all. And we'll go back to only buying things. So, for example, I have pre-ordered Chris Speck's new book because it's the only place I think I can get it. So I have ordered that from them. And obviously I will continue to buy yours. I'm from America, just love Japanese arts authors. They really hit emotions on there. Oh, which bit of America are you in at the moment? I'm trying to work out whether it's 3 in the morning or 6 in the morning where you are. No, not 3 in the morning. I'm doing maths badly. Illinois. Oh, okay. Oh, I've got. There's another person who follows me quite regular, who I speak to quite regularly on here. That's from Chicago. So yeah, sorry, that's 6 hours behind, isn't it? Is that Itanchi? I can't remember who it is. I've got a list somewhere of who's from where, but yeah. Right, I'm going to crack into chapter 35, which is the last thing I really feel like I need to achieve today anyway. It's a 20-page one again, and it's got... So are you just come home from work, or are you just about up to go to work, assuming you are working today? Yeah. Right, so chapter 35, Life and Death. Marianne rushed over to the Skuld that held Mackenzie. Let me look at him. It did not move. Marianne turned to Ronnie, not comprehending. What's it doing? They're very literal, replied Ronnie. It's not stopping you from looking at him. Tell me exactly what you want it to do. Lay him on the floor so I can give him a medical examination. Skuld, lay Mackenzie on the floor and allow this person to examine him. As Ronnie spoke, she briefly tapped Marianne's shoulder. The Skuld lowered Mackenzie carefully to the floor, ensuring that his head did not hit the ground. Mackenzie did not move for a moment, then took a slow, deep breath. Then he took a slow, deep breath. Oakley shook his head. I'll go and find the doctor, he said as he left the Arboretum via the main doors, pausing briefly to take a look at Mackenzie as he did so. Meanwhile, Marianne leant down next to the prone figure, grasping his wrist. They closed their eyes for a few moments. His pulse is rapid but very weak, they said. He's cold to the touch. They looked up. Why won't the tree help him? I don't know, replied Ronnie. Maybe I can persuade it. She placed her palm flat on the white surface where the cladding had been removed. Nothing happened for a few moments, then the skin puffed up around her fingers. We don't have time for a full-on interface, but if I can let it know that I'm here, perhaps we can speak through Claire. She raised her eyebrows at Claire, who nodded back to her. I'm going to need to concentrate, said Ronnie. Try not to disturb me. She closed her eyes. Oakley re-entered the room 2 minutes later with Matthews and Vickers in tow. Vickers made immediately for Ronnie, but Claire called over to him. Leave her, she's trying to communicate with Signwolf. Vickers stopped in his tracks and then joined Matthews on the ground next to Mackenzie. Matthews looked up, his face grim. I'm so sorry, he's gone. His heart just stopped. Marianne closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath before looking across at the doctor. We have to keep him alive just a little longer to give Ronnie a chance to connect to... Oh, God. Now, the creature was originally called Gaia before I renamed it Signwolf. And that's one of the few occasions where I've missed that. Why is it called Sign Wolf? Well, I'm not going to explain, I'm just going to carry on doing this. They paused for a moment. I can do CPR. They pulled Mackenzie's shirt up, exposing his chest. All right, conceded Matthews. I'll do the chest compressions. You can do the rescue breaths. He interlocked his fingers and placed them in the centre of Mackenzie's rib cage, level with his heart. 5 breaths now, then 2 every 30 compressions, he ordered. Marianne crawled around to Mackenzie's head and lowered their mouth over his. They breathed in through their nose and exhaled through their mouth. After the 5th breath, Matthews pushed his hands down sharply on Mackenzie's chest, counting out loud. On the 4th compression, he heard Mackenzie's ribs break. That's normal, he said quickly. Claire called over to Vickers. There's a defibrillator on the wall next to the computers. We don't need that, huffed Matthews. His heart isn't fibrillating, it's stopped. I was thinking of the mask in the back, snapped Claire. It'll be easier to get breaths into him with that. Ah, OK, good idea, said Matthews. 20, 21. At 30, Marianne did 2 more rescue breaths. Meanwhile, Vickers had pulled the defibrillator from the wall and opened the zip at the back. He pulled out the mask and rushed over to Marianne, who placed it over Mackenzie's mouth and nose. When Matthews reached the next count of 30, Marianne blew twice into the tube in the top of the mask. Mackenzie's chest rose and fell as they did so. Ronnie opened her eyes. Claire, Simewolf is aware that Idrisil's ambassador wishes to speak with them. They should connect at any moment. There's an at missing there. Claire nodded, and then her eyes appeared to glaze over. She closed them, and when they opened a few seconds later, her expressions had changed to one of irritation. What does Idrisil's Veroandi wish to say to me in such a rapid fashion? Why not communicate the way you were meant to? Ronnie ran over to the surgical table and started to undo the straps that were holding Claire in place. Because I need you to save someone's life, and I don't have time to talk to you about it in the normal way. She glared at Claire. Can you see through those eyes? Does what you are seeing make sense to you? Claire inclined her head. I can, and it does. Then sit up and look at what's happening on your left. Claire slowly raised herself into a sitting position and glanced over in the direction Ronnie had indicated. What is this? You are seeing 2 people trying to keep a third alive. As Ronnie said this, Matthew's count reached 30 again, and Marianne leaned down and delivered 2 more breaths. The 3rd person is also Veroandi. I know who he is, snapped Claire. He is going to die. You can save him. I will not. Why? Claire shook her head. Because none of you are worth saving. Ronnie shakes her head immediately after Claire shakes it. No, that can go. It's amazing how I spot the repetitions when I'm reading it off paper and I don't when it's on the screen, isn't it? Ronnie shook her head. Because none of you are worth saving. Where am I now? No. What makes you say that? Because you do not obey the rules you put in place to govern yourselves. He's going to die. He's been mistreated and used as a tool by cruel men and by entities such as yourself for his entire life. I want him to have the opportunity to experience better. Claire shook her head. What would be the point? If I absorb him now, he will still die at Ragnarok. He will never reawaken. Why should I waste my time? Marianne jumped up indignantly, motioning Vickers to take over what they were doing, and ran over to Claire. Because he's a good person, they snapped. He's never harmed anyone, and Idrisil's plan has done nothing but harm to him. Who are you? Demanded Claire. They are called Marianne, said Ronnie. They're one of my closest friends, and they have been worried about Mackenzie since the people who run this facility abducted him. They? Asked Claire. Why the use of a plural pronoun? Does more than one inhabit that vessel? It's complicated, said Ronnie. Explain. It's easy, snapped Marianne. I'm not male or female. I reject the binary. I'm just me. But you are male, said Claire. That is how I was born, yes, said Marianne. But my personal experiences led me to feel that I'm neither gender. Why do you wish me to save Mackenzie? Marianne looked around just as Vickers and Mackenzie Marianne looked around just as Vickers gave Mackenzie 2 more rescue breaths. Because I love him, they said eventually, their cheeks reddening at the omission. Romantic love? Kinship? I don't know, floundered Marianne. A bit of both. Are you sexually attracted to him? Ronnie's stare gave way to a slightly bemused smile which she hid from her face when Marianne glared at her. Yes, they said. And you wish me to save him so that you can have sexual union with him? Marianne shook her head angrily. No, I want you to save him because he deserves to live. Why are you trying to embarrass me? Did you take advantage of him when he was unconscious? Of course I didn't, they exclaimed. But he would not have known. If you're attracted to him, why did you not? Because that's not how civilised people behave, yelled Marianne. That is not my experience. Your kind just take what they want. You should have taken what you wanted from him when you had the chance. That's disgusting, shouted Marianne. I don't know who you've spoken to, but intimacy is a shared consensual experience. What you've just suggested is abhorrent. You value consent? It's non-negotiable. Interesting. And how many of your people would share that conviction? Most of us, interjected Ronnie. What the hell has this got to do with anything? This vessel, Claire, she has recently had an experience which suggests otherwise. But look into her mind, said Ronnie. I know you can. Look at what she wanted. Look at how she conducted herself. Look at what her memories say and her attitude to intimacy and consent. Claire closed her eyes. Marianne looked at Ronnie, who nodded. A few moments later, Claire's eyes opened again. It is as you say, she said eventually. Claire's recent trauma was contrary to her expectations and experiences. Claire looked over at Mackenzie. Something else troubles me. If Mackenzie is an ambassador for Idrisil, why is he Yukunda? His Uror let him down, said Ronnie. Explain. His Uror, Carruthers, lost his wife. She died. He did not want the pain of her loss and the joy of her memory to be dulled by Idrisil, so he refused to interface. Unfortunately, it made him unreliable. He did not nurture and protect Mackenzie the way he should have. As a result, Mackenzie has had a difficult life, and the challenges he has faced made him what you would describe as a better person. So it would appear, said Ronnie. Explain. I want to understand. What were his negative experiences and how did it have a positive impact on his character? Marianne squeezed Ronnie's hands and stepped forward. He had many negative experiences. He was homeless, rejected by his family, sometimes didn't have enough food. He had to beg and sometimes steal just to stay alive. Claire nodded. You are holding something back. Yes, I promised I wouldn't say anything to anyone. Ronnie touched Marianne's shoulder. I think under the circumstances it would be okay. Marianne's eyes moistened and turned back to Claire. He was sexually abused as a child, they said slowly. His family used him to repay debts they could not otherwise have paid. Ronnie's eyes widened with shock. I'm sorry, I had no idea. Marianne continued. It still affects him today. He has nightmares about it. He's often incontinent as a result. Marianne angrily blinked back tears. And all of this because people that he should have been able to trust let him down. Claire lowered her eyes. I understand why my earlier suggestion was distasteful to you. I'm sorry. Sorry enough to save him? It would set an unfortunate precedent, replied Claire. Therefore I cannot. Marianne walked over to Claire and took a hand. Please, they begged, their eyes wet with tears. He deserves a chance to live. He has simply existed up until this point, yet with all the atrocious things the world has thrown at him, he's still a decent person. Claire withdrew her hand. Do you also consider yourself a decent person? I think so, yes. What would you be prepared to do for me to agree to help him? Anything, answered Marianne. Literally? Asked Claire. Marianne nodded. I am unwilling to take him into me, but there is an alternative. If you consent, I can transfer your life to him. He would survive. And what would happen to me? Claire looked serious. You would die. He would live on in your form, and you would die in his. Is he that important to you? Marianne looked at Ronnie and closed their eyes. He is, yes. And you'd be willing to die to save him? I would. Ronnie stepped forwards. Her face had reddened over the course of the conversation she had just heard. No, that just needs editing. Sorry, I'm really getting into this, but there's a bit I need to change, which means it's going to break the flow somewhat. Why? That's a bit better. Sorry, break the flow. You'd be willing to die to save him? I would. Why? Asked Simwolf. Ronnie stepped forward, her face reddening. Are you sure? I don't want to die, replied Marianne angrily. But I know he can be happy if he's looked after. When I was young, I was bullied at school, treated as other. Even my parents were embarrassed by their weird gay trans kid. I struggled with an awful depression and anxiety throughout my teen years. I almost ended my life on more than one occasion, but eventually I found the right people to surround myself with. I've been so happy for the last 12 years. I'm too young to die, but I can't bear the thought of Mackenzie never discovering who he is, never feeling the joy brought by acceptance. They looked at Ronnie through reddening eyes. I know you can be that friend for him. I wish I could be too, but this is looking like an either-or situation. Marianne hugged Ronnie, then stood directly before Claire. When can you do it? When can you save him? I can do it now. OK, Marianne exhaled and straightened up, tears streaming down their face. Let's get it over with. Scald! Cried Claire. Take Mackenzie and place both of his hands on the tree. Vickers and Matthews jumped out of the way as the Scald that had previously carried Mackenzie lifted him and took him to the tree. A second Scald held his hands up onto the trunk as it had before. Marianne, said Oakley, walking over to them. Don't try and stop me, they said softly, turning to Claire as they reached the trunk. What do I do now? Stand next to Mackenzie, instructed Claire. Place your hands on the tree next to his. Marianne did as they were told. This is your last chance to change your mind, stated Claire. Are you certain? Once I initiate the process, it cannot be halted. I am certain, said Marianne. Ronnie walked over to Oakley, her hands covering her eyes. He put an arm... Hang on, I just need to clarify who's putting their arm around whose shoulder there. Ronnie walked over to Oakley, her hand covering her eyes. Oakley put an arm around her shoulder. Sweetheart. Actually, that can be in the same paragraph. Sweetheart, Oakley said to Marianne, you don't need to do this. I do, Marianne said through the tears. I can't survive Ragnarok thanks to Lord Farnborough. Oakley turned to Claire. Mackenzie finds Marianne to be a reassuring presence. To put it bluntly, they need each other. Use me. Use me instead. Transfer Mackenzie into me. He turned back to Marianne, shrugging his shoulders. I'm dead now, whatever happens. There's no time for debate, said Claire. Marianne has chosen. I am ready. Now. Marianne felt a warm glow on their hands and looked across at Mackenzie. They could see the bark was raised around his fingers, as it was around theirs. His body started to be drawn into the tree. As his hands were pulled in, Marianne looked at their own and wondered if the same would happen to them. His arms were almost fully within the tree now, and the pace of his absorption suddenly accelerated. A few moments later, and had been completely swallowed by the flesh of the old oak, Marianne closed their eyes and waited for it to happen to them. Claire sat on the surgical bed, then lay down. You have given me a lot to consider. Do not interrupt my deliberations, she said. I will communicate further when I'm ready. With that, she closed her eyes. The sensation of warmth around Marianne's fingers ceased. They stood with their hands on the trunk of the tree, looking around them. Has something gone wrong? They asked fearfully. Sayers looked at the monitors. Steinwolf has left Claire, he said. Marianne lifted her hands from the tree. I don't understand. Ronnie walked over to them. I think it was a test, she said eventually. I think Steinwolf has decided to save Mackenzie. I think you persuaded them to. Marianne wiped their hands across their face, suddenly exhausted. Ronnie hugged them. Neither of them noticed the sound of a phone ringing. Said Sayers, pulling the mobile phone from his pocket. Carl Tucker's calling. Shall I answer it? Oakley walked menacingly towards him, pointing to the phone. Give that to me now. Sayers looked reluctant, but Ronnie stared at him and approached one of the scald. Sayers handed the phone to Oakley, who answered it. Hello? Is that Sayers? He is here, said Oakley. Am I talking to Carl Tucker? You are? And who are you? I'm the person who's calling the shots at your arboretum now, replied Oakley. I'm sorry to tell you that all the people working here are dead, apart from Mr. Sayers, and how long he survives will relate directly to what you say and do next. There was a long pause on the line. Are you Gordon Oakley from Arbour Associates? I'm going to say by any chance. Are you by any chance Gordon Oakley from Arbour Associates? Said Tucker eventually. Oakley frowned. Put it on speaker, said Ronnie. Scald, kill Mr. Sayers if he says anything. She touched his shoulder to identify him to the scald, and he flinched. Oakley hit the button on the phone so that everyone in the room could hear both ends of the call. I am indeed Gordon Oakley, he replied. This facility is now under my control. How did you manage that? It appears that you've underestimated the resources available to us, replied Oakley. I need that facility, said Tucker. I will give you anything, Mr. Oakley. Tomorrow is the general election. On Friday, I'll be visiting the Queen. Once that is done, I'll have the might of the armed forces of this United Kingdom behind me, and I will be able to crush you. So I suggest that you leave immediately and return control of the Arboretum to Mr. Sayers. We have the might of Idrisil behind us, replied Oakley. Can I turn this into a video call? Why? There is something I want to show you. There were a few seconds of silence, and then Tucker's leering face filled the phone screen. OK, what do you want to show me? Oakley walked over to the line of scald and showed them to Tucker. If he was expecting a surprise, he was disappointed. Ah, scalt. Lord Farnborough told me about those. He also told me a way to circumvent them. You have approximately 48 hours to return the Arboretum to me and Mr. Sayers, or you will find out what it is. What's so important to you about this facility? You are no doubt aware that thanks to the equipment designed and built there, I can talk directly to the entities that are attempting to hold our country, and indeed the world, to ransom. To deliver what I have promised in my manifesto, I need to negotiate an extension to the deadlines that Idrisil has imposed. I'm informed by Lord Farnborough that they are capable of being more flexible than your ambassador, Miss Arden, has suggested. Ronnie let go of Marianne's hand and stepped forward in front of the camera. And as he told you, there are two factions at play. One that wants to give us a chance to survive, and the other that favours our total destruction. One that intends to bring on Ragnarok. Has Lord Farnborough told you that he works for the Ragnarok faction? Tucker shook his head. Restore control of that facility to me, or you will regret it. You know that I have the ambassador's friend Daniel Huxley? I can make things very unpleasant for him. Ronnie's face paled a little, but she maintained her composure. You can threaten me as much as you like. I am simply a messenger between Idrisil and whoever she wants to talk to. I can't make decisions. I can't influence the outcome in any way. And that's your final word? It's a fact. Okay. Tucker gave a nasty smile. I think I have a way of changing your mind. I will call you back in 2 hours at 1 o'clock on the dot. Tell Mr. Sayers to answer the call on his computer, not his phone. The screen went blank as the call ended. Ronnie looked both angry and scared. What do you think he's going to do? I'm not sure, Oakley lied. We probably shouldn't take that call, and if we do, I don't think you should be there. They're going to hurt Danny? Oakley looked regretful. Quite possibly. Sayers raised his hand. Ronnie nodded. Scald, this man may now speak with no consequences, she said, tapping Sayers on the shoulder. Can you create Scald anywhere? Asked Sayers. Anywhere there's a decent-sized tree, yes, said Ronnie. I honestly don't know where he will be or what he's going to do, said Sayers. But once the call is live, we may be able to work out where it's coming from. You could then use Scald to help your friend. That won't work, said Ronnie. When we've determined the location, I then have to get to a suitable tree that is connected to the network, initiate communication and send my instructions. It would take too long. I think that needs to be simplified because actually she could just talk to the entity. Oh no, the sine wolf wouldn't work. I need to get suitable to the network, initiate communication, send my instructions. It would take too long. Yes, of course, because, as we know, Simon wasn't connected to the network. Sorry, I was just trying to help. Oakley walked over to him and stared into his face from less than a foot away, deliberately invading his personal space. Can we trust you? Sayers gulped and gestured to the Scald. I want to live, he said honestly. I think we can trust him to do anything he thinks will save his own skin, said Marianne. I agree, said Ronnie, turning to Marianne. How are you feeling? I don't know, they said. What's happening with me and Mackenzie? I might be wrong, but I don't think swapping minds with bodies is something they're actually capable of, replied Ronnie. So yes, I think it was a test. Simon wanted to see if you were willing to give up your life to save his. And if it was a test, I think it's safe to say that you passed, added Oakley. Both of you, said Ronnie. Simon has seen that there are two people willing to sacrifice their lives to save Mackenzie. Hopefully that will count for something. Right, and then there's another misprint there. Hang on. Do you think Simon is healing him now? Marianne tried not to sound too hopeful. I think so, said Ronnie. It certainly doesn't need him for anything else. We still have our original problem, said Oakley, cutting across the conversation. How do we get Simon reconnected to the rest of the network before Friday afternoon? I don't know, admitted Ronnie, but it's vital that we do. Because if Mr. Tucker does become Prime Minister and has the means to use the military to retake this facility, then we are done. Nothing will be able to prevent Ragnarok. Ronnie left the Arboretum a few minutes later. She needed to prepare herself for what was coming. She knew it could be nasty, and that she had to stay strong in front of Carl Tucker, whatever he threw at her. At her request, Vickers and Sharvan had done a comprehensive sweep of the facility and located staff quarters. Once she disregarded the one that belonged to Sayers, she chose another and asked Vickers to empty the room, leaving just a bed and leave the bed and a chair. Claire would have recognised the room as belonging to Clayton. Vickers and Sharvan managed to remove the contents in less than 10 minutes by throwing everything into an adjacent room. Ronnie sat down on the freshly made bed and closed her eyes. Tucker was going to threaten Danny. He might even kill him. And if Tucker was prepared to murder her friend, he must have another bargaining chip that she did not yet know about. She hoped upon hope that he did not have access to her parents. Even if he did not, he probably would come Friday. She shook her head wearily. There was a knock on the door. Go away, she called out. She'd asked to be left alone. It's Marianne, came the voice from the other side of the door. Ronnie relented. Come in, then. Marianne opened the door and walked into the room. I've come to talk to you about Danny, they said. An apprehensive look crossed Ronnie's face. I can't allow this facility to fall back into Carl Tucker's hand until we've found a way to return Simewolf to their collective. Marianne inclined her head. And you've considered what that might mean for him? Ronnie looked directly into Marianne's eyes. Yes, she stated. Humour me. Ronnie looked annoyed for a moment before taking a deep breath. They will probably kill him. Marianne's expression softened. Are you ready to deal with that? How could I be? Ronnie said angrily. He was my best friend for years. She lowered her gaze. I've not said this to anyone else. We had sex just before my first interface. He's the first and only person I've ever been with. He's a beautiful, kind, generous soul who'd do anything for anybody. And I may have to let him die today. I don't have a choice. I could give this place up, save him. But that would mean the end for everyone, including Danny. He dies either way and there isn't a bloody thing I can do to stop it. Marianne exhaled. I've seen a strength in you today that I've never seen before, they said. It scares me a little, to tell you the truth. but are you honestly strong enough to watch them hurt your friend? Or worse? No, said Ronnie, blinking away tears of frustration. I'll put on the performance expected of me as Idrisil's ambassador, and when I'm done, I'll come back here and scream. You won't have to do that alone, said Marianne gently, if you're still talking to me later. Why wouldn't I be, asked Marianne, and Adrian will always be there for you as well. He'd disobeyed direct order to protect you now. I hope you realise that. I do. And you understand why? Ronnie exhaled and looked up at Marianne. Of course I do, and he's lovely, but right now if I show any feelings for anyone, that will be a weakness that could be exploited. If there is a world after Ragnarok, well then that's different. Ronnie paused. I do have a plan, but it's as nasty and exploitative as Mr. Tucker's. Can you arrange something for me? Of course. That video that Oakley took of the wreck of the Arboretum, make sure that it's on the computer we used to talk to Carl Tucker, and I want Sayers in that room as well. Ask Oakley to instruct him and the school that he can only speak when he has permission. Marianne nodded but looked doubtful. What are you going to do? Ronnie looked down and stared at the stained mattress below her. Anything I have to, she replied. I think I've gone overboard on details of how grotty this place is, and this is somebody's quarters, probably that isn't total scum, so I'm actually going to flower pattern on the duvet. On the duvet below her. Anything I have to, she replied. I want you to spend the time between now and the video call getting Sayers to explain how his interface system works. I know you won't have long, but at least try and understand what could go wrong with it and how to fix it. Marianne stood up looking uncomfortable. What are you planning? They asked uneasily. Ronnie fixed them with a firm gaze and said nothing. Marianne nodded uncomfortably and left the room. Ronnie sat on the bed, drumming her fingers on the, I'm going to say pillows. The video call with Carl Tucker was to take place in Sayers' small computer workshop, the same room they'd used to design all of the interface systems. As per Ronnie's instructions, the video that Oakley had recorded of the smashed Arboretum was saved onto the computer. Ronnie sat before the screen, front and centre. Behind her, but still in view of the inbuilt camera, was Sayers between two skulked guards. On the left, out of shot, were Oakley, Marianne, Claire Vickers and Sharvar. The keyboard for the computer was to the side in front of Marianne. The clock on the monitor clicked past 1. Ronnie glared expectantly at the screen, but the call did not come. They all sat and waited quietly as another 2 minutes passed. Trust a politician not to be on time, muttered Oakley. He's playing a game, said Marianne. He knows that you'll be here worrying. He wants you tense on the call. Another 5 minutes passed in total silence, until finally a window opened on the screen, accompanied by a ringtone notifying them of the incoming video call. Ronnie counted to 10 and nodded to Marianne, who pressed the button to connect. The image on the screen took a few seconds to form. She was not sure what she was expecting, but she had assumed she would be talking to Tucker. She was wrong. The face that filled the screen was Danny, a lot slimmer than he had been when she'd last seen him, but undoubtedly her friend. Hello, she said softly. Hi, replied Danny with a stifled sob. Are you okay? Danny shook his head. No, I've been told to tell you that unless you give up the Arboretum immediately, I'm going to be killed. A tear ran down his face as he blinked. Where are you? She asked. She could see green behind him, so he was probably outside. I'm not allowed to say, replied Danny, in case you try to send help. What exactly does Tucker want me to do? Danny shook his head. You have to leave the Arboretum immediately. Leave Sayers in charge until he's relieved by some of Tucker's people. Ronnie shook her head gently. I'm afraid I can't do that, Danny. She looked at his terrified face and wanted to cry with him. Why not? Because the future of everyone depends on what is happening here. If I give it up, we are all as good as dead. So you'll let me die? Because he says he's going to kill me if you don't do as he asks. Ronnie's inner turmoil almost got the better of her as he said this. I'm sorry, she said. I can't save you. Who are you? Cried Danny. Where's my best friend? I am Veronica Arden, Ambassador to Idrisil, Empress of the Trees, and leader of the Idrisil faction. What I do here today may very well be the reason any of us survive. But not me. I'm sorry. I love you, Danny. If there was a way I could save you, then I would. Danny's face on the screen was replaced by a man that 2 people in the room recognised. Bald and thuggish looking, Clayton had pushed Danny out of the way and was now staring into his camera. Claire gasped and put her hand over her mouth to prevent a further reaction. You'll change your mind, pretty lady, said Clayton with a grimace. How much suffering are you prepared to witness? There is nothing that you can do to change my mind, stated Ronnie. Really? Said Clayton with a sneer. We will just have to see about that. He stepped away from the video, allowing the camera to focus on the background. Ronnie attempted to maintain a neutral expression, but the moment she recognised where Danny was, she let out a small involuntary gasp. Marianne leaned across and pressed the mute button, putting their hand over the camera. What is that? What is it? They asked. Ronnie said nothing. It's her first interface tree, said Oakley after a moment, in Sherwood Forest, close to Ursula's home. This is the tree we need to find a photograph of, Bow Street Society, by the way, on the 8th. Ronnie exhaled. I'm okay, she said. Continue. Marianne nodded, removed her hand from the camera and unmuted the call. As she watched, a man with his face covered pulled 2 stepladders into shot and used them to support 2 planks of wood horizontally 3 feet from the ground, immediately in front of the tree. Danny was led back into the frame by another 2 faceless men. He was forced up a ladder and stood on the newly constructed platform. The clothes on the top half of his body had been removed and he was wearing a pair of light grey tracksuit bottoms. He was sobbing, but obeying every order that he was given by the men. Another man climbed the ladder and stood next to him on the wooden platform. Clayton spoke, although he could not be seen on the video image. Agree to release the Arboretum to Mr. Tucker, or we will hurt your friend before we kill him, he said. Ronnie glared back down the lens. I can't do it, Clayton was heard to say. Another man climbed up onto the platform and barked an order at Danny. Hold your arms up by your sides and lean against the tree. Danny complied, and the first man held his arm in place on the surface of the old yew. The second took out a large nail and a hammer and held the nail above Danny's open hand. Seeing what was about to happen, Danny screamed and tried to wrench it away, but the captor holding him was too strong. Another man on the ground walked forwards and shouted at Danny, pointing a gun at him. Danny stopped resisting. Marianne leaned in and tried to hold Ronnie's hand under the desk, but Ronnie gave a faint shake of the head and pushed it away. The masked man raised the hammer and drove the nail through Danny's hand and into the tree. He screamed as blood poured from the wound. The man hammered another nail into the same hand as the second pulled his other arm back into position. 2 more nails were inserted into his other palm as he screamed. Once it was done, the men jumped down, leaving Danny standing alone 3 feet in the air on a wooden platform in a crucifixion pose, blood pouring from his wounded hands. He was obviously in shock, and moments later he vomited down his front. Clayton stepped back into the video. We can continue if you like, or you can release the Arboretum to us. I have a doctor here that could help your friend, if you're quick. Ronnie shook her head. I have a counter-proposal for you, she said. Now that I know how far you're willing to go, I have something to show you. She looked across to Marianne and nodded. I know Mr. Tucker will be watching this, even if I can't see him. The video that Oakley had recorded of the Arboretum came up on the screen. It was only 30 seconds long, but almost as soon as it started they could see Clayton answer a call on his mobile. He ducked out of the shot, and they were left with an image of Danny nailed to the tree, crying and covered with his own vomit. A minute later, Clayton returned. Mr. Tucker would request that you do no further damage to the Arboretum. I happen to know that he will need Mr. Sayers to repair the damaged systems, said Ronnie, stepping out of the frame. Scald, bring him forward. The Scald dragged Sayers in front of the camera. He looked scared, but said nothing. Scald, break his left arm. Sayers shrieked as the creature to his left twisted his arm, then held it in 2 hands, one close to his wrist, one close to the wrist, and the other close to the elbow. One close to the wrist, the other close to the elbow. With a savage twist, it broke the limb. Sayers screamed again. Clayton answered his ringing phone again, this time without bothering to step out of the shot. He said yes a couple of times, then took the phone from his ear. Release Sayers or we'll kill Danny now. Ronnie sat back down in front of the camera. I won't be doing that. Clayton shook his head. He leaned forwards. We're not bluffing. Unless you want to see your friend die, you have to do as we say, immediately. Ronnie shook her head. There is too much at stake. Sorry, let Danny go or I'll have Sayers killed. Then you'll have nothing. Shaking his head in disgust, Clayton put the phone back up to his ear and uttered a few words. There was a response, and he nodded. I've been ordered to kill him. You have until I've done so to change your mind, obviously. The images that now on the screen came to Ronnie as though she were in some kind of daze. One of the hooded men stepped back into the shot carrying a sword. He handed it to the other man as he climbed the ladder, and then it was passed up to him. He pushed the tip into Danny's side, just below his rib cage. Danny shrieked in pain. Last chance, sneered Clayton. Marianne grabbed Ronnie's hand under the table, and this time she did not push it away. I love you, Danny, whispered Ronnie softly. The swordsman leaned back, then thrust the sword deep into Danny's side, so deep that the bloody point emerged from the flesh on the other side of his body. Danny let out a horrific scream as the man, with both hands on the hilt, swept the sword outwards, splitting his stomach wide open from the inside and dragging most of his intestines out with it. There was a sudden scream, not from Danny, but from the swordsman, as the surface of the tree started rippling. The main trunk seemed to bulge, then in a brief second it swallowed the disemboweled form of her friend. Hang on, there's a the missing that I need to put in. Ronnie had her hands over her mouth, but now she looked into the camera in triumph. What are you going to do now? She yelled. Shaken, Clayton stepped back into the shot. Mr. Tucker warned me this might happen. Don't worry, we have a contingency plan. He stepped away again, and several men with large petrol cans stepped into the shot. They doused the ground around the tree and the trunk with litres of the colourless fluid. Ronnie shook her head. Adrian, give me your gun. Vickers stared at her. What are you going to do? I said, give me your gun. Wordlessly, he handed it to her. Standing next to the skulled restraining Sayers, she put the gun to his head. If you set fire to that tree, Sayers dies. Then you have no way of recreating your project. Marianne tried to step forward, but Oakley grabbed her arm. Don't do anything, he hissed. Well, let's see who's going to break first, said Clayton. Give us the Arboretum. Ronnie looked from Sayers' terrified face and into the camera. Never going to happen. I don't know if what the tree has done to your friend means he might survive somehow, but I'm guessing if we burn it, then he definitely won't. And I'm guessing if Sayers' brains are spread all over the carpet, he won't be much use to Mr. Tucker. Sayers whimpered, which Ronnie ignored. Clayton stepped away from the camera, could be heard talking to his phone, but the sound was not loud enough for them to hear what he was saying. Are you really prepared to do this, Ronnie? Asked Oakley softly. What if he calls your bluff? Ronnie turned her face to him, her expression unreadable. I'm not bluffing. She looked back down at Sayers, who was shaking. Make peace with whatever God you believe in, Mr. Sayers, because I don't think Mr. Tucker is going to back down. Sayers stared at her, wide-eyed with terror. You won't do this. You can't. Ronnie shook her head. If he sets fire to that tree... Oakley interrupted Ronnie, the scream. As her back had been turned, someone had struck a match and thrown it into the roots of the old yew. Flames had engulfed the soil and the trunk. Many of the leaves on the lower branches were already ablaze. Ronnie turned to Sayers. Sorry, she said simply, before pulling the trigger and shooting him in the face. Sayers fell sideways, what was left of his head hitting the floor with a sickening thump. Claire screamed and ran from the room. Kill the video, ordered Ronnie, handing the gun back to a startled Vickers. She looked back around to see that Clayton was staring down the lens at them, mouth open. Marianne, stop the video. Marianne pressed a few buttons on the keyboard and Clayton vanished from the screen. There is nothing for Tucker here now. Hopefully he will leave us alone and we can work out how to return Simon to the collective. I'll be in my room. I want to be alone. I'll talk when I'm ready. She strode purposely towards the door. Vickers started to follow, but she rounded on. That includes you, Private. She managed to maintain a composure for just long enough to slam the door behind her. Marianne looked angrily down at the corpse on the floor. I don't think I know who she is, they stated angrily. Oakley shook his head. She is precisely who we need her to be. I had just no idea that she was capable of being that ruthless. Marianne gestured to Sayers. Will his death achieve what she wanted? Stop Tucker coming, they asked angrily. I don't know, replied Oakley. Private Vickers, I know she told you to keep out of the way, but I want you to wait near her room in case she needs anything. Vickers nodded. Sir. He left the room. Oakley looked down at the mess on the floor. I suppose we ought to get this cleaned up. Marianne shuddered. Do we need to come in here again? Oakley pondered for a moment. Probably not, he conceded. Then I need to get upstairs and continue trying to figure out how the interface works. It would have been much easier if she hadn't killed him. Marianne gestured down to Sayers in disgust. I'll talk to Claire when she's calmer, see if she knows anything useful. They left the room. Oakley gestured to Shavar to follow Marianne, then removed his jacket and placed it over what remained of Sayers' face. I'm sorry, he said, before walking over to the door. He took one last look around, then left, closing the door softly behind him. Now that was where this chapter initially ended, and then I remembered I had one more scene I needed to put in, so this was written a little way after the rest of the chapter. The car carrying Lord Farnborough stopped at the tall security gate as a bored-looking soldier left the guard hut, walking towards the vehicle. He leaned forward as Woods opened the driver's window. I have Lord Farnborough here to visit Lieutenant Colonel Adams, said Woods. The soldier stiffened. I will let him know you're here, sir, the soldier replied. The soldier dashed into the hut and picked up a telephone. He spoke into it for a few moments, then turned to Woods. An escort vehicle will be with you shortly. Woods nodded and closed the window. Farnborough took a metal case from the inner lining of his coat and pulled out a cigar and cutter, which he used to snip off the end of the cigar, raising the cigar. How many times can I put cigar in one sentence? Incidentally, when I wrote that, I thought Ronnie was bluffing. I had no idea she was actually going to kill him until she did. In my chapter plan, she didn't kill him. She didn't have the guts to. And then she just did. Psycho. Right, Farnborough took the metal case from the inner lining of his coat, pulled a metal case from the inner lining of his coat, and pulled a cigar and cutter, which he used to snip off the end of the cigar. Raising it to his lips, he lit it and drew deeply. They waited a few moments before a jeep pulled up on the other side of the security gate. Another soldier got out and walked through a side gate next to the main one. He approached Woods. Follow the jeep, he said. Park next to me. Park next to me when I park. Woods smiled and nodded. Moments later, the large barbed wire-topped security gate swung open. The driver returned to his jeep. The soldier at the gatehouse saluted as Farnborough's car passed into the compound. The army vehicle drove past buildings of various sizes, from small dwellings to large warehouses. People moving about, some in military garb, some in civvies. After a few minutes, the jeep pulled into a small car park next to what looked like an office block. It stopped in one of the parking spaces, and Woods drove his car into the next space but one. The soldier stepped down from his jeep as Woods walked around the back of the vehicle to the near side passenger door and opened it. Farnborough stepped out, brushing ash from his waistcoat. "Is your driver coming with you?" asked the soldier. Farnborough shook his head. "No." "Then if you will accompany me, sir." The soldier strode forwards, taking Farnborough to the large pair of swing doors that was the entrance to the nearby building. The conversation that Farnborough had with Lieutenant Colonel Adams had been short. The garrison commander had objected until Farnborough reminded him that he represented the man who was inevitably going to be Prime Minister in a couple of days. At Farnborough's request, almost everything that was planned for that day had been postponed. Farnborough wanted to inspect every soldier based at the garrison, all 4,000. It was not possible to get them all into a parade ground at the same time, so Farnborough had agreed to see all of the garrison's men in 4 sessions. The first units were about to enter the parade ground now. I'm going to lose the ground now. Let's lose the word parade. Lieutenant Colonel Adams looked proudly at the men as they started to line up. He, Farnborough and a few officers stood on a raised seating area overlooking the ground. "That's the 10th Signal Regiment, the 27th Regiment, the Royal Logistics Corps, the..." "Fascinating," interrupted Farnborough dryly. "Are my spotters in place?" 3 men were standing at the foot of the raised seating. Adams nodded. "What are you looking for?" "A special unit to go up to Scotland after the general election results are announced," replied Farnborough. "And by what criteria are you selecting the men?" Farnborough smiled and turned to Adams, tapping the side of his nose. "Need to know, old chap." He looked down at the men messing at the front of him and realised that he'd seen the first example of what he was looking for. "That group there. 8th Engineer Brigade? Send the spotters." Adams nodded and spoke into a radio. The men at the base of the platform moved into the rows of soldiers. Farnborough pulled out some binoculars and looked at the 8th Engineer Brigade. "4th row, 3rd from the left," he said. Adams repeated the instructions into his radio, and the spotters moved across to the man in question. At their orders, the man raised his left arm. Farnborough smiled. "Yes, him." The man was escorted to the foot of the platform. As this happened, Farnborough looked carefully at the other troops before him. He pointed to another soldier, and the spotters again moved into the crowd, after which they confirmed that the right man... There's a word missing there. That they had the right man in the same way, and escorted him back to the platform. "And that's all from this lot," said Farnborough. "Next group, Lieutenant Colonel Adams." Adams barked all into his radio, and the soldiers on the ground started to move away. Move away by group in an orderly fashion. "What the hell is all this about?" asked Adams grumpily. "Mr. Tucker will explain," replied Farnborough. "And that's all I'm getting, despite the massive disruption you've caused me here today." "Indeed," replied Farnborough with a sly smile. "And if I don't find enough men here today, I'll be repeating the exercise in Tidworth later on. Better let them know, just in case." Adams looked irritated, but watched as more of the men of his garrison left the parade ground. Farnborough lit another cigar and took a long, slow drag. Right. I don't know who I've got with me still, or if you were here, you were able to pay attention to that. I don't know if you're here still, Tani. Do you know what Farnborough's doing? Oh, but you might not still be here, because I've gone on a bit. Be happy. No, I think he knows, she knows. That's not really a question, is it? Crucifixion spelled with an X in the UK? Let me just check that. The UK spelled crucifixion. Oh my goodness. There you go. I've learnt something today, that I can't spell crucifixion. No, let's just set in the next space, that's easy. There we go. So that's that chapter. Bear in mind, I've done a lot of work on this chapter before today. This is literally the very end of quite a long process to get it to this point. So that is a very... Oh, God, I don't know what it's doing now. That's not what I wanted it to do. Hang on, let me just... Come on, you. Right, and there we go, chapter 35, which is a really important chapter, because, as you can probably imagine, well, Marianne's impassioned plea does actually work, and the tree entity actually decides it will advocate for a small number of human survivors of Ragnarok. The only problem is, by then, but it still can't get that information out to anybody. So let's just have a quick look at what happens in chapter 36. Oops, what's that just done? Oh, let's just put chapter 36 into the wrong bloody folder. There we go, right. So that's that one. Okay, that's another long one, but I haven't read this one at all. So whereas the ones I've just signed off, I've read several times over the last few days, tinkering with them as I went. The one that I've got on the screen now, I haven't read through since I wrote it. Okay, don't get me wrong, I did a thorough sign off before I signed it off from the first draft. But there we go. Right, that's me. I don't know who's still here, to be honest. I'm guessing Bow Street Society isn't. But you might be. Well, anyway, so thank you to anybody who is or has watched. That's me done for today. Bearing in mind my target for the month was to get to the end of chapter 30, and I've just signed off chapter 35. There's only 8 chapters left. 5 which are the end of the story, and then 3 which were meant to be the epilogue, until I realised the epilogue needed to be a little bit bigger than what I'd originally planned. Anyway, as I don't seem to be seeing anybody in the chat, I'm going to say au revoir. I'll be back maybe tomorrow, we shall see, but at some point in the next couple of days. I do have some other things I need to do, so really, if I have any sense, rather than carry on with that for the next few days, I need to submit the English Hikikomori, one of my other books, to some agents, and I need to prepare the package to submit my other book, Still Life, which I've promised I'll do by the end of this month, and it's now the 27th. I am going to record my podcast today, but I'm not going to do it as part of this live stream. I'm going to sign off now, record the podcast, and then I'm going to go and get my artwork from the framing shop. Cheers for watching, everyone. Thank you to everybody who I've interacted with today. So it's that Yokai, Bow Street Society, Angel Fate 87, and was there somebody else early on? I don't know if there was, actually. No. So those are the 3 of you I've interacted with today. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.